Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures with Aggie, brought to you by Coco's Coffee House. Go check them out. They're located at Bleecker Street in Greenwich Village. Today, we're hearing from another member of Cirque Du Soleil. Her name is Lauren Joy Herley. She's a rope artist and a contortionist. She's going to tell us all about her story, the pressures of being in Cirque du Soleil, and how much she loves it, the true passion behind her art. So please welcome Lauren. Lauren, how are you doing today?
Great, thank you. It's a beautiful day in Montreal. It always makes me super happy when
Yes.
it's gorgeous outside. Yes.
Same. It's beautiful here in New York today as well. So that's super exciting. But just to kind of get started, can you give me a little bit of background on who you are and what you do?
Yes, so my name is Lauren. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, United States, the Pacific Northwest. Was still one of my favorite places in the world today. And I was one of four kids. Um, I was kind of your underdog gymnast, fell in love with movement and pressing my body to its limits and kind of reaching the extremities of my physicality. In essence, I kind of fell in love with that very young. I think around 6 years old. I asked for ballet classes, gymnastics. I was swimming, competitively swimming, taking diving. Um, and I had this kind of strange hinge in my back too. I was really flexible in the back, but also really strong. But luckily, I didn't have anybody kind of catering to me, saying, "Oh, that's really special. That's really unique." It was like, "Oh yeah, well, her parents were athletes, and my parents were like, yeah, we were really good athletes, and they were still super fit." And so I really thought it was just normal, and my desire to train 6 days a week and dance and improvise music and watch the Olympics all the time. I really thought it was just this normal thing. And I just kept going, kept going. And it wasn't until as a teenager, I had a teacher tell me that I should really start researching circus. She was a coach, and she was kind of a bit more open-minded as a coach. In essence, she wasn't the one telling us like watch out for your weight. She was a bit more like that's good, you're strong. You need to nourish your body, a bit less old-fashioned traditional, in essence, of saying you need to be super skinny, you need to be. So she already was kind of progressive thinking. And so she saw me, and I think she saw the flexibility aspect and just saw how I was constantly, searching. I would always want to work with the ballet teacher to look at my floor routines. I was really into editing my own music, and other girls would ask me to choreograph their routines. And she was like, you should research circus. And I was like, oh my gosh. And this is as internet's kind of coming along. And I go to the library, I start seeing things, and I'm like super inspired by these black and white photos, images, and even some videos of these American women, traditional circus, wearing the high heels, but super beautiful, muscular, climbing the rope, using the rope to climb and get to their apparatus, usually the rings or a trapeze. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I just had this calling for it, in essence. And I immediately started to be like, okay, how do I use this search engine, YouTube, whatever this is? And discovered that Verikai by Cirque du Soleil was playing in Seattle. And I'm about 15, 16 right now. And I was like, boom, I'm buying myself tickets. And it was just this confirmation. I saw it, and I could tell, like, okay, that's a lot of work, because I knew I had a very good foundation of training, but I could just understand this is a whole other spectrum, getting into something like this. But I just knew, like, this is what I'll pursue. And I went to my parents and I said, look, I have this much money saved up. I went and got a passport. I'm going to first study and train in San Francisco, where there's Mongolian, Chinese, and Russian teachers. Get ready for a year. And I said that I'm going to audition to go to Montreal. And they were like, what the heck is going on? And I'm like, yes, I don't want to go to university. I have to go to Montreal because there the government recognizes circus as an art. And there's a national circus school. It's really tough to get in. They take only, at the time it was 19 to 20 people per year. Um, I just said, like, I have to try. And I I did. I did it, and they were like, "Okay, she has a plan." And I did exactly what I said I was gonna do. And I remember too, I had sent a few videos out of, you know, fun while I started getting so exposed to circus in my later teens when I went to San Francisco, just learning so many different disciplines from swinging trapeze to Russian technique straps, Chinese technique straps, Mongolian contortion, handstands, what it is doing acrobatics on a hard stage floor rather than what a gymnast is used to, all these kinds of things. And I kept saying what I wanted to specialize in was rope. And at the time they were like, that's kind of a boring, really hard apparatus to it's used as a prop a lot. Not a lot of people specialize in it. And I just was like, okay, well, I will go somewhere where I can. In Montreal, as soon as I auditioned on the apparatus and said, this is what I want to specialize in, I want to minor in contortion and acrobatic research, they were like, oh yeah, great, fantastic. Because they're just a bit more ahead thinking there. Anything's kind of possible. I think they could tell with my body type, like, yeah, perfect discipline. So I even, before though going to the National Circus School at like 19, I was phoned by Cirque du Soleil in Vegas about a proposition to work on one of their shows. And it was like this huge ego booster as like a 19-year-old, like, oh my gosh. But when I said, oh, I just auditioned for the school in Montreal, they were like, oh, that is really good. You should do that. And we kept in touch, but in the end, it really was the best thing to ever happen to me to go to that school, because it opened so many doors. It was 3 years of grueling, scrutinizing, intense work, but I learned another language at the same time. You learn so much more than just your craft. You delve into so many other things, and it opened so many doors for me. So that was a big thing. And then from there, I just right away was signing contracts and touring the world with, it's been about a decade now. So I did about 10 years of international touring with companies like Cirque du Soleil. I did Cirque AWA, I did Creations. And right before the pandemic, I was on tour full time with Cirque du Soleil, living the life, the normal, a nomad, been to 40 countries, and was planning, I'm 32. I was like, okay, I'll buy a house eventually, and do this and that. And pandemic arrived, and so kind of shifted things, but I'm super grateful for what I had up until then. And I'm still super motivated and hopeful for the industry.
That's awesome. There's so many follow-up questions for you after that. But I kind of just want to ask you about your art. So you said it yourself, like rope, being a specialist in rope is hard. So I guess what was like the first time that you tried this? Like what was going through your head?
Okay, yes. So rope, I was used to having ropes in the gymnastics center from a young girl, and I always liked the rope climb. We'd have to do rope climbs, without the legs, either together or separate, and you ring a bell at the top. And I always liked them. And that was actually probably when one of the coaches started realizing, like, I should tell her to research circus, because I liked to also like hook my just hang with my hands together and go upside down, something super basic. But a gymnast doesn't do that. A gymnast is going upside down on the uneven bars as a female gymnast, and it just, she was like, oh, you absolutely need to do that. And I always felt really good in the air. I liked the adrenaline rush from it. I liked the feeling. It's painful, but I liked it, and it made me realize, okay, I need to pursue this as a specialty, because actually, not a lot of people connect with an apparatus like that, and a lot of people want to do circus and are talented, um, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a connection with your apparatus and you don't have some kind of light that ignites, that lures you in, in my opinion, it's kind of an unteachable thing, because then you will not be able to lure the public in. It's an unspoken kind of invisible strength. It's like, it's an organic connection you have with an apparatus, and you have to listen to it when it's there, and you still have to do all of the discipline training, a bit like in university. You can't just take classes in this, you have to take all of them. You have to still be disciplined in that, but you have to listen to kind of a connection when you feel it, and take on the challenge, even if it's a discipline as hard as vertical rope, because it means to make anything interesting on a vertical rope, it takes 10 times as much energy than even on the aerial fabric, or on a lot of other apparatuses. Especially me, I was working on it in an old fashioned way. I wasn't using a puller or a winch. I was doing all my own climbs and descents, and you have to make that appear seamless to an audience. And I liked the fact that it was so hard for me too. I think growing up, I was kind of used to being that like athlete, like, oh yeah, I can do this and I can do that. And I kind of seen this thing, it was kind of beautifully intimidating. I was like, oh, I'm going to master that someday though. But, still at 32 years old, and I kind of started it probably, over 15 years ago, it's still like gets me every day, the apparatus. It's like, I'll never quite master it, you know? It's that's what I love about it.
Yeah. And I think that makes it so much more fun when you can just keep getting better and better. It's not like there's any kind of cap, or it's like, okay, I'm done. Like I've mastered all I can do on the rope, which is, I think that's why you're still going, obviously,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think I'm inspired to, when you look at it, the people that have inspired generations, whether they're artists or scientists or engineers, they're people that have always stayed curious and have always questioned their work and gone like, well, what if and those are the experts, if you think about it, because they're constantly scrutinizing what they're doing, and they're constantly drawn to it. Like, oh, and I still get drawn and driven, like, oh, okay, this person, okay, she does it with the leg hooked up top. I pass the leg and then I create the spin. These little geeky, details, I love them. And this pandemic was super interesting too, because it connected me with so many friends, cyber wise. And we'd share, this is what I did today. What do you think about if I pass the leg here, or if I loop it around here, release the arms, like, is this drop safe when I catch it here? And we're just these Cirque du Soleil aerial geeks, kind of like loving our days, because we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I figured this drop out today too, but it's like a drop I learned 12 years ago, but I redid it in a different way. Um, so I've always wanted to kind of be one of those artists, experts that's just constantly curious and wanting to learn.
Definitely. It's so cool. I think that even though like we're kind of virtual and everything, I think people have gotten so much more creative, and kind of like what you're doing, it's like revamping things that already exist but making them a little better because we have some more time for that. So
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
definitely. I'm actually grateful for that, because, on tour, 9 to 10 shows a week is really hard. And in 300 shows a year, about it's hard. You don't have a life, your life is on tour, and that's really beautiful. But you have one day off a week, which is most likely a Monday. That's your dark day. um, and it goes by super fast. You try to rest as much, recuperate, eat a really good meal, whatever that is for you, get in the nature, go swimming, and then 24 hours later you're already at the big top, at the tent, and you have to deliver. It's this kind of, show business is different than other careers, and I think it's similar to elite level athletes. It's like, when it's time, you have to deliver, and unless it's an urgency, like, you don't miss a show. You don't do that. And so you're always at this stage, like, okay, I have a little training session before each show, but I was not trying new things often. I was not, because I was like, my show tonight, my show tonight. And I was playing a lead character, and I had two solos. It's you want to deliver for your company, because also at the end of the year, when it's time to renegotiate or discuss a new contract, that's value. That's what they see, is this artist is consistent, they deliver. So then this pandemic happened, and I've been like, okay, so how to maintain, the strength, the endurance, but also, like, okay, I literally today can do some strength and endurance. Okay, I get my warm up ritual, and then I can really dissect this one section. And I'm like, try to have fun doing it, Lauren. Like, try to have fun. And it is fun, and I'm actually, grateful for that. And also, the Quebec government recognized that we professional artists needed access to train. So I've been training at the Cirque du Soleil studios. It's super strict protocol. You register online, and but that was a lifesaver during this period. So very thankful for that.
I bet. I was going to ask you how you do these things that I've seen on your Instagram or wherever else in your apartment or your house. I don't imagine that's easy.
Right. Luckily, so the first lockdown, when everybody was kind of like scared, like, how do we do with this? And when also we thought, oh, we have a 3-month tour break, basically. Okay, these next 3 months are canceled. Now, like 15 months later, you're like, oh, okay. But I would go, Montreal has some great parks, and it has one especially really large park that I was running at today. And I would just go running there religiously and do all my training, use a picnic bench, like, oh man, like, bring a kettlebell, my yoga mat. And my boyfriend is a rigger. He did 12 years, Cirque du Soleil technician in rigging. So he once rigged my rope from a tree. Not the same thing. It's still really low, and you don't want to like kick the trunk of the tree or do anything too drastic. But we found our ways. And then luckily they started realizing, like, okay, we're going to have to open something for these people, or else we're going to lose all our artists. So yeah, that was a interesting period. I now feel like anything, like, I feel like after this, there's really nothing we can't do, huh? Because we've had to use so many resources within us, and get creative. And really, there's nothing you can't do. I feel like anybody could throw a pie in our face, and we'd handle it gracefully and be like, oh, okay, I can use that somehow. Or yeah, it's really funny.
Definitely, definitely. I wanted to touch on something you said before. Like before each performance, you have to deliver, and like that's, I guess, what you're thinking about. But can you just kind of describe what's going through your mind, say before your solos or before you step out there and you're standing in front of all these people? I guess, how do you feel and what are you thinking about?
um well, first of all, I'm always nervous. I'm not, it's not an anxiety nervous. It's not bad nerves. I've felt bad nerves before, and that's never a good sign. You don't want your nerves to get the best of you. You want to use your nerves for the best. So it's like, okay, I've got nerves, my adrenals are pumping, like, I've got adrenaline, I'm going to use this to drive me, especially if you're at show number 9, 10 of the week, or you even had sometimes a triple show day. I have to try to switch my paradigm if I'm getting nervous and say, I'm going to use this for good. And I breathe, and I go at it one thing at a time. And it's easier said than done, because the show like that I was performing before, I was probably on stage. It's 2 hour or so show, and I was on stage about 80% of the time. But there was, the primary moment, that's a 6 minute like rope act. That was the one, that's where the pressure's on. And I put pressure on myself. And also, I feel like the nerves increase with age, because people know who you are. A lot of them, they know your name. You've got the name of Cirque du Soleil on your back, which you want to represent with pride and excellence. And then you've got your own name, and people know, like, this is Lauren Herley. She's one of the first females to graduate from this school in Montreal doing vertical rope. She's the first to do this kind of climb this many times in a row. And you get more nervous. And especially if there's people in the audience, circassian, we call them, if there's, new promoters, or, festival scouting people. It's so that there was always this moment, it's waiting is tough in essence. So once I'm on stage, I'm good. I've got this, my microphone's on, I'm playing the character, I'm jumping all around. And then I remember my act, the solo rope act, which was the most kind of intensely demanding for me, and where I put the most pressure on myself, was kind of the opening, like, pow number after intermission. Oh, so it was always, whether I was performing in Lebanon or Montreal or in Saudi Arabia, or wherever I had heartbeat, and I would have to, I had my ritual. I would get that microphone off. I would adjust the costume, use the restroom really quick, and I'd hear, those standbys from stage management. Standby 10. Okay, you're prepping. You're putting the rosin, the chalk in the areas. You feel the humidity. How's my grip gonna be today? Is it too dry in the air, or is it too humid? What's my sweat like? I'd always peek, see how the riggers have preset the rope. Does it look good? Yeah. I mean, it's like these routine things that you do. You're feeling in between your toes. And I would stand right back at the entrance of the stage in the dark. And the singer, I knew this song like the back of my hand. I knew my cue, and it was like her song. It's triggers. I think it's the adrenals. Like, the song had triggers, because it knew, like, one more count of 8 and you're running on. And so it just, like, it's the same thing that I'd feel like raising my arm to a judge at 14 years old to do, at a competition in gymnastics. It's that same kind of rush, because your body's prepping to, deliver, even though you're doing it 300 times a year. That's why sometimes I wondered, there's a lot of things, circus people, having this as a career, that you wonder. Sometimes I'm like, I wonder if this is, like, good or bad for me, this career choice. Like, oh, it's okay. I love it. And it's, I've learned too. I remember when I was a young artist, I had some more mature, artistic directors say, like, oh, your work is beautiful. I'm like 22 years old, just finished the school. They're like, gorgeous work. They said, you will learn over time that being tired, like, and having a demanding schedule, and being able to perform tired and use that, is a gift. And I remember being kind of like, well, I still will be able to throw all my biggest tricks, and, like, I won't let myself get tired. And now I get what they're saying, performing into my 30s, I was like, I get it, because no show is alike. And it's true that if you have drilled enough in your muscle memory, you will perform an excellent show regardless of how weak or maybe dehydrated you're feeling in that moment, or if it's in your body, you know what to do. You can turn on your autopilot in essence, but you really need to tap in. I would really tap into, where am I today? And I'd play the character based on that. And it would bring me into the present moment, that's what kind of live performance is all about. It's alive. And so it's almost a meditative kind of flow state that I think athletes tap into. And it's like nobody can enter in it. People, even if it was chaotic backstage and, technicians saying jokes and stuff, if I had, I'd be standing there about to go perform this act 9-10 meters in the air. It's like nothing. It was like, it's hard to explain. It's almost like sci-fi, what goes on in the brain. And it's like a meditative, powerful state that you tap into. And I love that feeling. I love it. Yeah.
I I'd imagine you'd have to love it a lot to do it. What'd you say, 300 days a year? That's absolutely wild, but it's so cool. Awesome. I just have a couple more for you. This one I've been asking all of the people involved in Cirque that I've interviewed so far, and I love the answers. But if somebody has never seen Cirque before, how would you describe it? And I guess what would you tell them to expect?
A Cirque du Soleil show, first of all, they're all different, right? But, circus, if we take it back to its traditional essence, which I think is super important to remember, is that it's basically the celebration of extraordinary things. And it really, be prepared to feel an essence of, extreme potential. And but with the fact that we've put on something for you in a live moment, with human emotion, human drive. It's been created by humans who have hearts, who have families at home, who have lost people, who have dealt with their own human um, experiences through life. But yet we have kept a dedication to this extraordinary art form. So Cirque du Soleil keeps that essence alive, but while keeping it human at the same time. So you can see and witness elite level athleticism, quote unquote, with really extreme things, from, Mongolian style contortion to, someone like me who was trained, as an aerial expert basically, but also an acrobat generalist. And to a clown who trained in France and trained in theater in France. You're going to see this elite level craft, but you're also going to see the human behind it. And I think that's why people get moved. I think it's why people, though, get moved watching athletics at such a high level, but it's the moments before and after that move an audience. The Olympics, I remember I cried watching, even, track and field, when they reached that finish line. I was moved by that. I was so moved, and it still can move me. Well, it's moving just seeing someone go risk something for you, and go say, like, I loved it this much, and it was all worth it just for that moment, that one fleeting moment. Because it really is. It's very fleeting. It's so instantaneous. And then you go do it again the next day, and then the next and the next, but no day is alike. And so, yeah, if people come with it with, an open mind, they're most likely going to be moved and just be super inspired. It's and it's, yeah, it's probably one of the most cool live art, forms out there. For me, I might be a bit biased, but yeah. Mhm.
No, definitely not. It's a fact. I love it. That's so cool. I love seeing how much you love it too. Like just hearing you describe it, like I can tell. But awesome. That leads in perfectly to next question. I mean, spoken about obviously how this has impacted your life, but I just want you to go a little bit deeper into how Cirque has impacted you professionally and personally, like some things that this has taught you that I'm sure you'll remember forever and ever.
Uh, I think that if you have toured internationally with like Cirque du Soleil and you've done this and you have been successful at it, you most likely are, a good person because you have to, you're constantly dealing with an environment filled with different cultures around you, different backgrounds, different languages, and we all are working towards the same thing. Like we want to perform the best show we can every single day. And we're in that struggle together, whether sometimes you're dealing with tough conditions, in certain countries, in India, the air quality was really tough, food poisoning episodes. We're in this together and we're going to make this work out. You have to keep a certain amount of healthy ego. I'm all about the healthy ego, and I think I learned that over time, that voice in your head that says I can do this better. That voice in your head that's like, oh, I want to train with a partner, because when I train with a partner, I'm like, oh, she does a rap like this. I like this preparation. That's more efficient. I see that. I want to try that. Or it's just the same ego that you want to do more push-ups the next day than you did yesterday. That healthy amount of ego is really important. And as a performer and in the performance industry, you can see the healthy ego and you can see it going to the unhealthy part. And that's something I learned, like, oh yeah, you know, I don't want to be like that, because this is a person who, is self-centered, can't put themselves in other people's shoes, and at the end of the day really doesn't care, about others from themselves, has this kind of, narrow vision. That's the kind of the dangerous kind of going a bit on the danger side of the ego, the fragile ego. You want an ego that's healthy but able to take correction, take notes from your artistic director. I've worked, you would not believe how many people I can't take a note though. Like, Lauren, I saw that you were able, that yesterday, remember I asked you to lower yourself at this moment? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Like, why do you think people who are successful and up there in life um, are people who are still able to take correction, you know? And how many times I saw people, they can't take notes, and most likely those people didn't last in the industry or with the company. It's like always an excuse or justifying a mistake, or always. So if you have made it, you're most likely a good person who can say, oh yeah, they can take correction, take corrective criticism, and can give it respectfully as well. And most likely good communicators. I mean, having this career made me very curious to learn about communication and kind of the human psychology as well. I've read books on communication, and if I could tell my younger self, read books on communication now, it would have changed a lot of things, from how I negotiated a contract to how I, conversed with my artistic director, to my choreographer, how I expressed an idea. Um, it's really important. You need to be able to make your voice heard in a respectful manner. You need to also know when to be quiet and take a correction. And you need to also know that some coworkers, some colleagues, whether you're in the arts or not, are just not going to like you. And yeah, you need to be able to have self-reflection and go, I wonder why. And you can ask some advice like, do you think I'm a rude person, to someone you trust maybe? And if really, if it's still not going well with some coworkers, understand that it's not the end of the world if someone doesn't like you. Like, still strive to be polite, professional, and be a team player. But at the end of the day, it's probably best to keep your circle small anyway, and focus on the work. It taught me that at the end of the day, because you're still in the arts, there can be gossip going around. I have had relationships with coworkers on positive terms with everybody, but there were rocky times. There were times there were way too many people who knew about my private life. And what helped me through all that was to just focus on the work, and be like, okay, this person, I've worked with them one time and they apparently know everything about my intimate life and they like to show it off in front of groups of people. Well, I'm going to be the classy person and just nod my head and do a kick-ass show tomorrow, because your work will speak for you. There's no need to have to prove things. If your work is there, if the excellence is there and the work ethic is there, it speaks enough. You don't need to suck up to anybody at a company party, behave badly. So it taught me a lot about, I think, professionalism and how to be, a good human, kind of. It's I wouldn't trade it for anything. I learned a lot. Yeah.
That's amazing. Cirque makes good people. I love that. That's perfect. Awesome. Well, Lauren, this has been great. You answered well beyond the questions that I had prepared for you, which is amazing. But thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much about you and Cirque, and I can't wait to put this one out there.
Yay. Okay. Well, my pleasure.
Lauren, thank you so very much for coming on the show and sharing your passion with us. On Monday, tune in to hear from Vitor Silva dos Santos. He's going to tell us all about capoeira and jiu-jitsu in Cirque du Soleil.